Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. Today I'm doing a response video to a video that Richard with ReviewTechUSA. Rich has a great channel where he talks about current events and all kinds of topics surrounding video games. Really cool. Well, he recently did an episode on if he's ever been too depressed or had too much anxiety to play video games. He posed this question and he answered it himself. And the answer was yes, that it does happen to him from some time. He's a family man, and sometimes when the kids have gone to bed and his wife is occupied doing something else and he's got free time on his hands, sometimes he's simply too depressed or has too much anxiety or whatever to play a video game. And it's a good question, and I respect him a lot for answering that honestly. And so, does that ever happen to me? Well, every once in a while, I could say. But I remember a severe case of it happening as far as being depressed one time. Too depressed to play video games. So it was when my kids were younger. It was years ago. They were, gosh, this was a long time ago. Maybe late 90s, early 2000s, probably early 2000s. So my wife and kids had gone off for a few days, maybe to visit her mom or something. They were gone 2 or 3 days. And I was looking at the weekend ahead. I didn't have any writing deadlines. Yeah, this would have been the early 2000s. Didn't have any writing deadlines. I was a writer then, but I didn't have anything pressing or urgent. And it was before I had been writing books, didn't have any book deadlines or nothing hanging over me. Pretty much had the weekend free. And I was actually kind of looking forward to it, just having a little time to myself to check out my game room and just really get absorbed in maybe some more complex story-driven games, things I could concentrate on and just really spend some time on. You know, with little kids in the house, that can be difficult sometimes. So I was just looking forward to just, you know, I didn't want to go see anybody or have any plans. I was just looking forward to really being at home and just really getting absorbed in my favorite hobby, video games, or one of my favorite hobbies. I've got several, as you guys know. So there I was, about an hour or two after they left. For some reason, I slunk into a deep, dark depression, one of the most depressing, one of the most depressed I've ever been. Now, I'm a guy, I suffer from male syndrome, where I don't like to admit if I'm depressed or sad or anything like that. I kind of sometimes don't even feel like I like to admit I have emotions of any kind. Sometimes I feel just peculiar saying if I'm excited or happy about something, which seems kind of weird. I just want to be a robot, at least on the outside. But anyway, so they were gone. Perfect opportunity to really dig into some games. And I just slunk into a dark depression and could barely do anything. I mean, I got up and moved around a little bit, but I remember spending most of the weekend just sitting at home in the dark, maybe watching TV, a little bit here and there, but nothing seemed good. None of my DVDs looked good. I didn't want to play any games. And this was a drag. It was a whole weekend wasted. Now, I know some of you, this happens with some regularity. I mean, just the odds are depression is a serious problem and it affects a lot of people, clinical depression. And, you know, I know there are some, you know, ways to mediate this. There's diet and exercise, and there's, you know, getting prescription from your doctor. And if you do have clinical serious depression, I definitely recommend getting professional help. I mean, I don't want to tell you what to do, but the one thing I would ask you to do is, you know, seek professional help. There's nothing to be ashamed of with depression. It's just part of the human condition. And I'm ashamed to say that I grew up thinking that if you had severe depression or if you had, you know, anxiety to any degree, and if you struggled with these things frequently, that you were weak. And I hate to admit that, but I've gone well past that now. I haven't felt like that for a long time. But just, you know, as a teenager perhaps, and maybe my early 20s, I just thought that was severe character flaw and not just part of the human condition. So shame on me for that, but I've you know, gone way past that. And part of that is empathy. I did have that little bout with depression, and there were times, I mean, I'm not a man of steel or anything. I definitely have times that I've been depressed, and every once in a while I'll deal with that a little bit. And you know what helps me? I mean, I'm a pretty active guy, so I'm usually very motivated, but I do have, you know, a little depression here, like, you know, most people. And what typically helps me, I mean, I'm already very active with diet, you know, I have a pretty good diet, a little bit of a sweet tooth, but I get quite a bit of exercise. But if I do find myself down and I just can't pull out of it, I will have a small amount of caffeine, maybe a 12-ounce Coke or a little tea or something, which leads me to my other severe instance of what Richard was talking about. Rich was talking about anxiety and depression, and whether those have ever, you know, made it just where you didn't want to play video games. You're too depressed or too anxious. It doesn't happen to me often, but occasionally I'm down in the dumps. And depression can strike for no reason. It can be, sometimes it's circumstantial, where you've just got a lot of problems and they make you depressed. But sometimes there's just no reason, and it just hits you, or no reason that you can see. So it's a serious problem. But this leads me to the anxiety part and the caffeine part. So there was a time about 8 years ago when I suddenly had a severe degree of anxiety. I had tons of anxiety all of a sudden. I got to where I couldn't work, I couldn't write, I could barely concentrate on what I was doing when it came to writing, and I had some deadlines, I had some articles due. You know, I was writing for the Star-Telegram, major metropolitan newspaper. I was writing for different magazines. Some publications that are now out of business, and I no longer write for the Star-Telegram since they don't hardly ever accept freelance work anymore. But I had a lot of irons in the fire writing-wise, and I couldn't afford to be too anxious to write. I just could not sit down. I could not sit down and concentrate on what I was doing. And so I went to the doctor and to see what was going on. They did blood tests and everything, and I got 2 or 3 different opinions, and they couldn't find anything wrong with me. And doctors have frequently said that I'm boring, that nothing's ever wrong. Now, recently I have had high cholesterol. I guess that comes with age. But before that, never anything wrong with me at the doctor. They talk about how boring I am, you know, with my blood pressure and, you know, pulse rate, anything else. But anyway, they couldn't find anything wrong. And I finally went to another guy and got an opinion. And he couldn't find anything wrong again, did some tests and everything. And he finally said, "Do you ever have any problems sleeping?" And I said, "I do. I had, you know, some insomnia here and there." He goes, "Why don't you cut down on caffeine?" And that seems obvious now, that maybe that would be a good thing to do if you're having anxiety, but for whatever reason, I didn't even think of it. I mean, I had gotten up for years and years. You know, I've been writing professionally since 1997, and full-time for a very long time, and I would get up every single morning with a strong hot cup of Earl Grey tea. Now, I started drinking Earl Grey tea after Captain Jean-Luc Picard on Star Trek The Next Generation motivated me to try it. We went over to a little get-together at my wife's friend's house, and she was serving hot tea, and I said, "I'd like to try Earl Grey," because of Captain Picard. This was back in the 90s. Yeah, super nerdy, right? But ever since, I had absolutely loved drinking Earl Grey tea. I like Irish tea, any good, strong black tea. And just leave the bag in it. The stronger, the better. The darker, the better. No milk or cream or sugar or any of that stuff. Just strong black tea. And I love that. I still do. But I can't have it much anymore, just every once in a while. Because all that caffeine over that time, I guess it had built up in my system, if that's a thing. But regardless, I had developed an intolerance to caffeine, because after he told me to cut down on caffeine, which I was consuming voraciously, mostly through tea, I gave it up cold turkey, completely quit caffeine. And after 2 days, my debilitating, is that without pillows? My debilitating anxiety, which I don't know how long it went on. It was hard to drive. I remember going on a trip with my wife and kids, and I just asked her to drive. This was before I knew caffeine was the problem. I asked her to drive a couple of times, And there were just, I just got immobilized, so to speak, with certain things. I just couldn't, I was fidgety and I couldn't think straight. It was a serious problem. And I was like, so this is what anxiety is. I'd never had it before, and it was crushing. But I gave up caffeine cold turkey after he told me to cut down, because that's kind of how I roll. And in 2 days, I felt 100% better. I was back to myself, zero anxiety. It was like a miracle. It was amazing, but it was just giving up caffeine that had built itself up so much in my system. Now, why any of the other doctors didn't say anything about caffeine, why I didn't think of it be, caffeine, I don't know. It was just such a common, everyday part of my life. It didn't occur to me, but that fixed it completely. So to answer Rich's question, yeah, every once in a while, a little too depressed to play video games, but ironically, a little caffeine here and there really helps strongly with that. And, but whatever, gosh, depression is tough. It is a serious thing. And I know some of you, odds are, suffer with it tremendously, and anxiety as well. It's a serious problem, but I feel fortunate, just lucky more than anything, that I don't deal with this too much. But it was a great question by Rich, and I appreciate that. But the anxiety that I did have and the depression that I have every once in a while has made me a little more empathetic with people that have these problems on a regular basis. It helps me empathize a little bit. Like my wife tells me, I can't seem to empathize with anybody over anything unless I've experienced it myself. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it definitely helps me empathize that I have, dealt with it myself a little bit. Now, that severe bout of anxiety, in addition to being empathetic, something good did come out of it. I wrote about my experiences for You and Me Medical Magazine, and if I can find that, I will post a link here. I wrote all about this bout with anxiety. So I did get a paying article out of the deal, and that led to other articles for them as well. And this sort of helped me lead me to writing about stuff other than comic books and video games and everything. I've written for a variety of different publications of some pretty serious topics. I've written about apps that help people with different learning disabilities and all kinds of things. But anyway, starting to ramble as I'm wont to do sometimes. Rich with ReviewTechUSA, thank you so much for sharing. Did I say ReviewTechUSA? Sorry, Rich. ReviewTechUSA, great channel. Thank you for sharing something very personal with your followers, with your fans. I really appreciate that, and it gave me the opportunity to do this response video. I appreciate that. If you guys are new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe. It's really helpful. And just, thanks for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing. I really appreciate it. And before I go on much longer, I am signing off now. Let me know in the comments, well, almost now. Let me know in the comments if you've ever been too depressed to play a video game and what that looked like. If you're comfortable doing so, or anxiety as well. Just let me know in the comments your experiences with these, just human conditions. Nothing to be ashamed of. It's just, I think most people have dealt with these things from time to time. And if you do suffer from these things, to a large degree, I really, really feel, I don't know, feel sorry for. That sounds kind of patronizing. I feel for you. I feel your pain, and I'm really sorry you have to deal with this. I'm rambling again, so I'm definitely signing off now. Thank you guys for watching. We'll talk to you in another video. If you're a fan of my work, you might want to consider supporting me on Patreon. For just a low fee each month, you get a lot of extra content. Another way to support the channel and my writing career is to buy books direct from me, including the 100 Greatest Console Video Games, the Classic Home Video Game Series. It's like an encyclopedia set. And this massive bad boy, the NES Omnibus Volume 1 A through L. I will put links in the description of this video where you can buy books direct from me and where you can support me on Patreon. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.